Good afternoon. It is 2 o'clock and we are ready to get started with our newest webinar for the NASIG's Continuing Education webinar series. Just a couple housekeeping things that I want to point out. We are recording, and this slide shows everybody some of the things that the NASIG Continuing Education Committee is doing. We have a webinar archive that you can find at nasig.org/webinars, and we invite you to go there to look at some of the webinars that we've hosted in the past. We also have a YouTube channel that you can find. We do want to highlight our upcoming webinar, which is Serials Ordering and Access Basics, which will happen on April 25th at 2 p.m. My name is Chris Vitus. I'm the head of collections and acquisitions at Clemson University, and today we are very excited to hear from Jessica Hartwigsen, and she's from California State University, and she'll be talking to us about the Alma network zone. And as many of us know, Alma is very complicated and sometimes difficult to work with, and the network zone is sort of a mystery within a mystery. So I'm very excited to hear about this topic today, and I know many of you are as well. So at this point, I will stop sharing and I will turn it over to Jessica. Thanks, Jessica.
Okay, so let's see, I'll share. Okay. Okay, everybody can see my screen, correct? Hopefully.
Yes.
Okay, great. Okay, get that. Okay, there we go. Okay, so welcome, and I'm excited to share what we do at the California State University Chancellor's Office to manage our centralized collections. I'm Jessica Hartwigsen, and I've worked with the California State University system a little over 30 years. I manage the electronic collections that are purchased centrally or negotiated centrally, which there's a little bit of difference. We have ones that we purchase, and then we have ones that we negotiate but don't pay for the 23 libraries in the California University system. I want to thank everybody for attending this presentation, and I hope sharing our consortial ERM workflow for renewing, ordering, and activating e-resources is helpful, and will shed some light on how the California State Universities and the Chancellor's Office work together in Alma. And I want to apologize ahead. We use a lot of acronyms. So inside the Chancellor's Office, and of course, Alma has some of their own built-in acronyms with the network zone, which we call the NZ, the institution zone, we call the IZ. So I'll try to reinforce what it is I'm saying and try to stay away from the acronyms that we use every day. But so I just wanted a little introduction there to us. Okay, so who we are, the California State University. We have 23 campuses. Also, we have our bib records that are managed in the network zone are actually managed by what we call a network zone management team. So it's 4 librarians from various libraries in our system, and they manage those records that are imported from OCLC. And then there's the electronic collections, which of course is what I'm managing. And we have 2 sets of collections, one that we call the Electronic Core Collection, or the ECC. And these are the resources the Chancellor's Office does pay for libraries, and all of them have access to these resources. And then we have the opt-in collections, which are the resources the Chancellor's Office negotiates on behalf of the libraries, but the libraries pay for those resources. And both sets of these collections are managed in the Alma network zone by me. So this is how it sort of all started, this idea of us all working together in Alma. It started a little bit over 10 years ago, just looking into it. And then, of course, all the stuff that ramps up to going live. The goal was to migrate the 23 libraries into a single management system. Our libraries range from very small, where it's just a single person, to large libraries that, of course, have many staff and librarians. Also, our ULMS, our Unified Library Management Systems, another acronym right there. We call it ULMS. So what this allowed us to do was create several committees and task forces that help with various functional areas, since it's a lot and there's a lot of obviously working parts. And if we're going to work together, then we're going to need to obviously communicate. So we have these task forces. So they range from Alma, Primo V, which is our discovery layer, which we call OneSearch. We have CDI, which is the Central Discovery Index, the records that are imported and are searchable in Primo V for the discovery, just like the book reviews, newspapers, et cetera. And then we also have Rapido, which is the resource sharing application we're using for ILO. So there's a lot going on in the project, not just our electronic resources. So we try to help centrally with a lot of these areas. So the Chancellor's Office itself has two library departments. My department is SDLS, which is the System-Wide Digital Library Systems. I manage the centrally purchased or negotiated resources in Alma in the network zone. Our sister department is SDLC. They're the System-Wide Digital Library Content Team. They negotiate with the publishers and the aggregators on behalf of the libraries for the subscriptions to electronic content. SDLC uses Consortium Manager to communicate the renewals with the vendors and the libraries. And once those negotiations are completed and everything is set up in Consortium Manager, then I go in and I grab that data and then I put that information in the Alma network zone. So then I am the Alma network zone. Now that we know a little bit about the 23, a little bit more about me. I started in library systems at Chico State. That's one of our universities up in the north. I started doing the library web pages and creating and maintaining databases. I started with a pretty simple database. I imported our journal titles and they linked off to those particular titles to the vendor. And then after I had some success with that, I also then did it for 5 other libraries in our system. It was, like I said, fairly simple, but it got the job done. And then in 2002, I was hired away from Chico to the Chancellor's Office, where I started configuring and managing the centrally purchased collections, not just Chico State's. So through that, when we started out with S of X for the link resolver, and then later we did MetaLib, and then we went to Summon, and now we're all on Alma. So one function I had not done until Alma was the acquisitions part of it. This is where SDLC, after they do the renewal process, then I take that information and the way that and I'll go obviously more in depth on this, but the way that it works is that then I have my own order that I have to set up and I have to create the licenses and then I link all that up to the collections. And so then these opt-ins are the ones that are negotiated for the libraries. Then they're able to order those opt-ins from the network zone. So not only am I managing and maintaining the e-collections, I'm also doing negotiated licenses, and I'm also doing the central index or CDI in Alma. So this is what I'm currently managing. I manage the 76 electronic core collections. Those are obviously in the Alma network zone. Then there are over 300 opt-in collections, as well as over 300 open access collections that I'm managing in the NZ. And like I said, because this is new for us in Alma, I'm managing the 200 negotiated licenses, mainly for the opt-ins in the network zone. And to be able to work at all, I do have to work closely with our sister department, SDLC, in the Chancellor's Office so that I'm able to get the renewal information and update the collections and licenses in Alma. So for the life cycle of our resources in the Chancellor's Office, as I said, the resources are renewed by SDLC, and after they finish up the renewal or add a new subscription to Consortium Manager, I take all that data and I update Alma. If I need a license for a resource, I create that license, I update the negotiated information, and I'll show what that looks like. The terms of use, the subscription information, add any title lists or signed agreements, anything that I could think of the libraries might need, I add that to this license in the NZ. Libraries have read-only access to the Alma licenses themselves, so they can download title lists, see any notes, see their subscription information. So, like I said, because they have access and they can see all that, I try to add as much as I can. Just as a side note, not every person that can get into Consortium Manager and see the renewal um, has that same access in Alma. So it's not always the same person. So that's why we have this duplication of information, one in Consortium Manager and then the other in the Alma Network Zone. So here's an example of what a negotiated license looks like. So we, of course, have the summary tab where I enter in the name of the license and I try to match it up to the Alma collection name as close as I can. I also add a license code, which can actually be anything you want as long as I suggest saying use a very simple pattern, but use a pattern so that it's easy to find. I also, of course, enter in the start and end dates of that subscription. And then this is the big important tab, this negotiation tab, which is that second screenshot at the bottom of this slide. So here is where I'm entering in all the negotiated price for each subscribing library to that resource. And I also add the name of the collection to this available content field. So sometimes a license can be attached to multiple collections just because it's part of the subscription. So, and not every library will subscribe to that. So I do this individual setup and it's really easy. It lists everything that's available for that license. And then I pick which content the library is sharing in that license. So we're managing it there as well in the license. So for the library to be able to order a collection in the NZ, the license needs to contain this negotiated price, and the collection itself, which I will show later, also has to be shared. Also, as a side note, I keep canceled subscriptions in the license. I, of course, remove amounts because I didn't renew, and I remove the content because I no longer have access to that content. But sometimes there's a lot of historical notes that I keep for that particular library and the subscription. And if they want to know, like, when did they previously have it? So I keep it active inside the license. It doesn't do anything. They can't order the collection, they can't see, but they can at least see the historical notes that they did at one time have a subscription and what the information is. And I keep that in the notes field for the specific library. So there is a tab that allows you to also see the purchase order lines, what we call the POLs, that are attached to that license. These are created when I order a collection from the Alma Community Zone. The Community Zone is the knowledge base. Those not familiar with Alma, the knowledge base where all of the electronic collections that Ex Libris adds and maintains. So that's the CZ. Um, so the I'll go over this a little bit more, but with the order process, when I say order, it isn't like I'm actually ordering anything. That is all being done in Consortium Manager, but that's the terminology in Alma. So I have to always say I'm going to order the collection, and it's a button that even says order, but it's not in the sense of like Consortium Manager and ordering. So it is a little bit different. It just has a specific functionality inside the NZ so that libraries can also order. And I will get to that. That was a little confusing because it is confusing, but I'll show that a little bit later. So there's also, of course, that notes tab, and this is where I put any information about the subscription. If I've received any emails from the vendor, I also put those in there so I can always have a quick way to recall an email conversation I had about a subscription with the vendor. And like I said, I try to notate anything I could think of that might be important about the license or the collection or the subscription. So, and of course, there's this attachment tabs. This is where I'm storing the title list or signed agreements, also PDFs of the license agreements from the vendor, anything that I could think of. Because again, like I said, they do have read-only access to the licenses and they can access these documents. So also, like I was saying, that the same information does live in Consortium Manager, but not everybody that has access to Consortium Manager. So it helps to have the information in Alma as well. Okay, so then there's the license term of use, which I know from like every conference I have ever attended, everyone talks about this is like the longest, laborious part of setting up licenses is getting these terms of use in there. Uh, Previously, I had a spreadsheet that was filled out by the vendors, and then I used an API to upload, and I could have licenses updated in like seconds. But the API broke, and Ex Libris won't fix it. So now I'm stuck with the ones I didn't get to, manually updating them. So the project is still ongoing, getting those terms of use in there. So and this I'll explain a little bit in this next slide, but we start now with, if there are licenses that don't have any fields filled in, we start with the ILL fields first because of a project that we have that's also ongoing, what we call a Rapid ILL lending notes project. So we start with this particular field because we need this information stored somewhere because we have to update collections. So I'm just going to quickly go over this little project. I say little, it's not, it's a big project. So we started this project where we're adding the Rapid ILL lending note to the terms of use in the license. And for Rapid ILL, also that note needs to be in the internal description of the collection because that information is actually being grabbed by a set of jobs, and it grabs the information and sends it to Rapid ILL. So we like to have that information in the terms of use because if you have it there, then we can run some analytics to pull that information out. And then we do a more automated process of updating the internal description with that note, having that information. So that's why we always say start with the terms of use and then go to the internal description of the collection to add that. So I didn't want to go into too much detail, but so we have this ongoing project. We have the easiest way to kickstart the project was to ask libraries to add local only to the open access collections, mainly because our ILL folks were getting a lot of requests for items that were available for open access. So they wanted this lending note set in there as quickly as possible to stop getting those requests that they don't need to fill because it's available through open access. So it's a little bit about this Rapid ILL project. It kind of all ties into everything that we do with our licenses and our collections. Okay, so here's the one that's, oh, this is so so difficult to like connect the dots. But so once the license is created, the collection is ordered. And we then, because of that order, create the Alma purchase line order. And I need that order for the collection for the particular resource so that libraries can also order the collection. So I need a license in the NZ. Of course, I need the collection active in the NZ, and I also need to have it ordered. So it needs to have its own specific purchase order. So once all of that is set up, the libraries can then order the opt-in resource from the NZ and create their own POL. So, yeah, that's so complicated. Sorry. So basically, the POL for a centralized resource lives in the institution zone, and the collection, of course, is in the network zone, but they're linked. And each library that orders that will have their own POL for that same collection. So I have a POL, they have their own POLs all linked to this collection. So they can find the POL in, like I said, in the institution zone, but it is linked to the collection in the network zone, and they can see that it is connected. So like I was saying, there's two different purposes for purchase order lines in the NC. Like I said, I use these to basically order the collection so that it's available to be ordered by the library, and their POL they use for the opt-in collections are used to pay back the chancellor's office because the chancellor's office, like I said, negotiates for the opt-in resources, but they don't pay for it. Well, they pay for it, but the library has to pay them back. So it's not covered. The cost is not covered by the chancellor's office. So hopefully that was not too confusing. That it's so weird when you start saying POLs and IZs and NZs, but basically these little pieces in the NZ have to be set up so that the library can then order the collection. So an example of that, here's just a quick little screenshot. I'll show a little bit more of this in as a live part of the demo. And I used our sandbox when I did this, so it doesn't quite match up because I don't like to have these extra orders sitting around in the system on the live system. But basically what you do is you find the collection, you click on order, and then it starts the purchase order line process. We only use electronic collection subscription when we're ordering in the NZ because that's all we have. We don't do individual purchases. We just do collection purchases. So we always use this in the NZ. It's very different in the institution zones, different types of, PO line types, but we only use this particular one. So after the order has been created and you start seeing how it's all linking up because I ordered the collection name is there. And then like the material supplier and the access provider, this is where I start going and grabbing that license information. So now I'm linking everything up. So I've got the license, I got a purchase order, and the collection now are all linked together by this process. And then the library can order the opt-in collection from the NZ and start their own purchase order process in the institution zone. So now that I have the licenses and I have the purchase order all set up, now I have the collection that I have to set up again so that it can be shared and it can be ordered by the library. So once you have the license and the order all set up, the collections need to be configured and shared, what we call sharing an NZ collection. So we need library that is subscribed to the collection. I add that to the group settings and I'll show that. So you'll see here there are 22 libraries that are sharing this NZ collection. Also in this summary view, you can see the availability of the Central Discovery Index records and who is getting those records, who doesn't want those records. So you can also see that from this summary page. Also, you'll see there's a link to the order. If I click on that, it takes me over to my order in the NZ, and I don't see any of the purchase orders that were created in the institution zones. So like I said, you can see all this information about the summary view of what I've done for the collection and who's sharing it. So I can see just from this, like who's sharing and who's not. I've mentioned this several times. This field to me is one of the most important fields I could use in a network zone collection. I also notate, like I did in the license, any information or changes to that collection or the subscription. If some like midway through a fiscal year, someone decides, oh, they want it, then I add that. I'm like, oh, okay, they only did a part year, so that's why they've been added here. I also, for ease of use to find these collections, like I said, we have the ECC, which is our electronic core collection. We have the opt-ins, which are the ones we negotiate. Of course, we have open access. So what I do is I add a note because this is a searchable and indexable field. So if I want to find all my opt-ins, I can find them all with a really simple search of the internal description, and I search by opt-in or I search by ECC or I search by open access or OA so that I can quickly find those particular resources in the NZ. So like I said, I like this field for every note that I could possibly find. I also notate, I put my initials even though I'm the only one updating it, but obviously I won't be here till the end of time. So I need folks after me to realize who made the update, when the update was made. And of course, with our Rapid ILL Lending Note project, this is the important note. This, like in here in this example, it says Lendable International. So this is where we're sticking all of those notes. And this is where we've been told to actually put the note. So we have to go through all of our electronic collections and add the particular lending note for that collection so that we can then send that information to Rapid ILL. So like I said, very important field. I put everything I can in here so that I can say, oh, yeah, or if there's anything like odd or different about the central discovery index setup, I put that in here. When I've had to make changes, I notate that I made the change when I made the change. So I try to like add as much as I can into here because like I said, it is indexable, it is searchable. If you want to find like a quick way to find particular collections. And this is because libraries can search the network zone from their own institution zones. It helps them to be able to find those particular collections that say they subscribe to, because from their viewpoint in the IZ, they just can just say, okay, find me the opt-ins, and it brings up the ones they're sharing. They don't see everything I see. They just need to see which ones they're subscribing to. And like with the OA or open access, they can use that to search on and find which ones they are sharing or not sharing in the NZ. And then, like I said, yeah, you can see that the collection is linked up to the particular purchase order line and the license. So after I've ordered it, all this information should be in this little section down at the bottom of the general tab, this acquisitions and license information. So that's your information. Anytime that we have had to switch out a collection, let's say during an update that we get from Ex Libris, they're going to discontinue a collection and replace it with another one. So we have to activate that collection, and I have to move this data. So it's really simple. I just do a copy paste and I move that over to the new section in the general tab, this acquisitions and license information. So it's really easy. And then I can get rid of the old collection. So here's another really important part of that collection and what I call the sharing when they're sharing a collection from the network zone. So it's all set up in the group settings at the electronic service editor area of the collection. So here's where I start adding the libraries. It's super easy. It's you there's a drop down, you find the library, you add the library, and because it's subscription, then you say, yeah, I also have to do proxy. It's like yes, no, or you leave it as is. And then of course I change it to proxy set to no if it's open access. So like I said, it's pretty easy. You get a drop down of the libraries. You pick the library in the group setting. And then like I said here, I check yes for the proxy. So it's I'll say this, it's easy to set up, but it's time consuming to do because you have to do it to every library. So if I have electronic core collection that all the libraries have access to, I have to add all 23 libraries, and it's one at a time. It's not a batch load. There is no batch load. I ask all the time. So I wish there was, like I said, it's just time consuming. It's easy. It's just time consuming. Like I know one consortia out there has 60 libraries, so I can't imagine how long that takes. I think 23 libraries takes a long time, so I can't even imagine doing 60. So also again, along with the electronic core collection and the opt-ins, I also managed open access. So there's I know like a lot of libraries when they look at open access, they look at it for like a collection development decision, whether or not to use it. Since I can't do that for 23 libraries, there are some things I can do though. So I created some steps that I follow and I go through to see whether or not we need to have that open access in the Alma network zone. So there's an overlap analysis tool that is both in the network zone and the institution zone. And I do run that quite a bit when I see a new open access added. So I just want to see basically if the new one has any unique titles to it. If I already have a bunch of titles activated that are already there for open access, I don't see the need to add one more. So I don't need to like maintain one more collection that has the same exact titles I have over in another collection that's open access. I check for linking to make sure that it doesn't ask for a login or doesn't only if there's only part of it's open. We made that decision in the NZ to not use these hybrids because it just got really confusing for libraries. So we just asked the libraries if they care to have these hybrids to go ahead and activate those in the institution zone. But like I said, there's some steps and there's a guideline that I go through. There's some specific notes I add to say, yes, it's open access, internal and public. So there's a lot of little setup I do. And like I said, there's some criteria before I ask. And then what I do is I send out a note via email to the libraries, and I say, I have this collection, it's available to share. Here's some information. Here's a link if you want to investigate it. So I send as much as I can and what I've done, and then I send that off to the libraries, and then they report back to me if they want to share the open access in the network zone. Here's a little example of the wiki page I created. I have 8 steps that I actually follow. So I go through and I check all of these the step-by-step guide that I wrote. So it's my guide and I follow my guide to make sure I've got it right. And I've checked everything. But it's good to have for, like I said, for the next person after me to know the process that I went through to choose whether or not open access would be shared in the network zone. So here's an example of what I would do with the open access. Like I said, I have these internal notes, again, in the internal description. Like I said, very important. I always add open access and OA so that both terms can be searched. And also, again, with the Rapid ILL, I'm adding in the Rapid ILL note that it's local only. So I try to do everything I can so that it's easy for libraries to find these collections, not just by name, but any of the other extra information they might need to know about it. So like I said, I try to put everything in there. Same with the OA. I try to put as much information I can as about that also in that internal description note. So then there's once you got everything set up, you've got your orders, you got your license, and the collection's activated. Okay, then there's the ongoing management of the network zone collections and the licenses. So this is how I start out my Mondays, the weekly update notes for Alma and CDI, the Central Discovery Index. There are notes sent out every week. And they just changed it. They were posting them on Sundays. They now do it on Mondays. This particular week, they're not going to do it till Thursday. But so you try to stay on top of those particular notes because you want to see the changes that were made. You want to see changes that are coming. If there's a collection being removed and being replaced, I better be ready for that. So my collection that's activated isn't disappear on me. I check for any changes to linking, whether that's the service level or at the portfolio level. I check on the linking to make sure that it's working correctly and it wasn't broken by a weekly update. I also check the CDI or the Central Discovery Index. I check those notes as well, and I see if there's any changes I need to make to CDI in the network zone, and I make those changes. And we also have quarterly updates for Alma, also Primo V, which is where the CDI lives, which is odd because weekly they have their own notes, but quarterly they're buried inside of Primo V. So I do go through those. I check to see if there's any change in functionality. Like with we just had the purchase order task list had a massive change to how it looks, works, and feels. So we had to kind of get used to that change and get everybody ready and like take a look. Also, when I was testing it, I found there was a problem with the renewal dates. They were matching the subscription to dates and they're not supposed to match. So when we look at these new functionalities, we do try to test them out and see if there are bugs and then report those back to Ex Libris support. So not only do I go through these weekly updates, I go through the quarterly updates, I go through see if there's been any major changes, test those. Um, I look at, like I said, subscription dates, linking, especially if we have a non-aggregator collection and we use a select title list to populate a collection. I check the deleted portfolios to make sure we don't have a portfolio disappearing that maybe we should still have. So I do check on those as well. And as just one more thing, I check on title transfers to see if we're going to lose access just from a transfer from vendor to vendor and track it. And I actually go back to SDLC, our sister department, and I ask them, are we going to lose this title from this subscription or not? And then they track that down for me. So then this is what that task list looks like. It is the Alma Community Zone Updates task list. And you look at the list, and there are two tabs, and one is for your stuff, and then one is the complete list of updates. Of course, I look at the network zone and I try to see what kind of changes were made, were they made correctly? So you kind of just go through these weekly and look to see what kind of changes were made and do some, especially if there's a lot, you kind of look and see if there's one particular collection that had a lot of updates and you're like, okay, you kind of like triggers this like, oh, I better check on that to see if the updates were good or they're okay. So you kind of always want to look out for like a major change. I think like last week or this week or that last week, it was like DOAJ and like there was but we had seen an email that said it was coming, but you could see there was a lot of updating that happened with that particular collection. So then, so at the beginning of the week, I send out information about the Alma and CDI weekly update that's sent out from Ex Libris. On Fridays, I then write up a report that is called the ERM and CDI weekly update, which is different from Alma and CDI because with this particular one, I check for anything, any like listserv I'm on. If there's something that might affect not only the collections in the network zone, but maybe collections in the institution zone, especially proxy stanzas. I don't update, I don't have to update proxy stanzas, but it's probably important to let libraries know if there's been a change. So I'm on that listserv. And if there's anything I think of note that they should know, I put that in the report. If we get a publisher platform migration, I think like the latest one was annual reviews. I make sure that information is in the update. If there's any scheduled downtime, you've seen like EBSCO, ProQuest, they have a scheduled downtime. I make sure to put that so that libraries are aware. If I'm sharing new collections, I put that in the update. And if I've updated the licenses with the latest subscription information, I also notate that. So this report is like it starts on Monday and I start collecting data and I start just putting it in this report. And at the end of the week, I send out an email. I say, here are the headings. If there's anything of interest to you, please take a look. And I store these on a Google Drive and they're in a folder for each year and I date each one of them for the week. So the folder is dated and the reports are dated so that they're easy to find so that libraries can always go back and find an old report if they didn't have to keep the email that I sent out. This happens like all the time. So I try to make it as easy as possible to find on, and it's a shared drive so they can take a look at the folder and grab the old reports. Another part of this, of course, is support. So recently, my sister department, SDLC, and I, for the last couple of months, have been working on documentation and a new wiki page to help clarify the process of support for centrally negotiated or paid for collections. We just presented last week our new documentation, and we also have a new shared email address. So two people from that team and then myself, because I'm the only one that's managing in the network zone, and they're in and their consortium manager. So this email, if a library is not sure who they should contact, they have this email address. So they can use the address and just say, I'm not sure who this goes to, here's my problem. So we just sort of like wanted to go through this to kind of speed up the process for troubleshooting. It was kind of being filtered. Not kind of, it was being filtered all of the problems from the libraries through us. And it was just really starting to clog up and slow down. We even had a vendor come to us and say, please let them just contact us. Don't go through the 5 layers of people it takes to get to just support. So basically, we're trying to connect libraries, no matter what the collection is. If it's managed in the network zone or in the institution zone, we want them to find the quickest path to support and resolving their issues as possible. So so we now have a list of vendor contact names, emails, forms, phone numbers, and so they have access to that wiki page as well. And we're just trying to really speed up the time it takes to resolve these issues. Because if it's left to us, then we have to go through all of those cases and go through each one, and then it's a back and forth until it finally gets back to the library. Oh yeah, okay, so it's been fixed. So this is like a little example of why I finally said we have to do something different. Um, we were we had asked the libraries when we went and switched to Alma to report any of the centralized collections that are managed in the network zone. If they have any issues whatsoever, we said, okay, use this Google form, and it was posting to a Trello board, and I could then manage the cases through Trello. Um, in 2020, we implemented CDI, the Central Discovery Index, and that sort of we had, like you can see right there at 2020, a major increase in cases that were coming in to me. These are my cases. These were coming to me. So all these cases are coming in, and I'm the only one that's managing them. So you can kind of see where it starts to really bog down because the cases are coming into me. I'm sending them off to the vendor, whoever the vendor may be. It's coming back through me. I go back to the library, finally get a reply. I go back. So you can see something in there needed to be removed from the process, and that would be me to speed it up. Because we were just it was just taking too long to get responses back and forth. And we just didn't need to be in the middle to bog it all down. So like I said, we've been working on this. And like I said, we just presented everybody, like, show the number of cases that were coming in and why it was such a slower process with us in the middle. When if it's needed, of course we step in. If a library doesn't like the resolution of to the problem, or they just can't seem to communicate and the problem correctly, then we are so happy to step in and do whatever we can. We just want to make sure that it happens as quickly as possible, and that we're there to back up the libraries if they don't like the resolution to the issue that they reported. So the what we've heard from the libraries that are now reporting their own issues. I said it's definitely faster, and they see the life cycle of the case. They can see all the responses. So that's great to hear. I'm glad that it's gotten a lot faster. And so, like I said, we've kind of just reimagined how we support and take care of these support cases. So now it allows me to actually support the collections in the NZ. So I can get to portfolio changes that need to be made, collection updates that need to be made, license updates, which really do need to be made. And that's definitely more on a timely matter, of course, when as fiscal years we get close to the close. It's really important I get those licenses updated. So now it is really so wonderfully freed up my time that I can get to these so much faster. It's amazing how much faster everything is happening now that we've sort of like reimagined how support happens with, even, like I said, the collections that are managed in the NZ and the network zone. So hopefully that wasn't like too fast. Like I said, I am going to show some live examples, but I just kind of wanted to give this overview of the centrally managed licenses and what we do in the central office, and how we manage, purchase, negotiate, how we all work together with the libraries. We do that. Our little small CO team tries our best to support the 23 libraries as much as we can. Um, we are a small team, but we do work great together. Our communication is fantastic, and that's been something we've really worked on between our two departments at the Chancellor's Office, as well as communicating as best we can with the 23 libraries too. And we also use Slack quite a bit. Like even yesterday, there was a ProQuest access. We kept getting internal server errors, and one library posted it on Slack, and then everybody started testing and checking their own ProQuest. So it was great to watch that happen, and then I could step in and say, "Yeah, I'm saying I see the same problem. Thanks for reporting it." And then I went off to the vendor and was asking about why we were seeing this error. So I will definitely say after migrating all libraries and ourselves to Alma, we've definitely had better communication and collaboration. So since our ULMS, the big project started, our communication and collaborations definitely have increased within the CO and between the Chancellor's Office and the libraries. Our functional groups have librarians and library staff, and we work together closely. So we have, like I said, e-resources, we have resource management, we have an analytics team, a resource sharing team, a discovery team, and a fulfillment team. We have noticed that these groups definitely all link together. So if we, everything is sort of interlinked and connected. So these groups work together when they start seeing an overlap. Like I said, CDI moved over from ERM over to Discovery. So the ERM people do work now closely with Discovery on some of the CDI changes that happen so that we're aware of what needs to be changed and when and how. And so we do work together that way. Also, moving to Rapido and also Rapid ILL, we know how that affects the changes we had to do in Alma and also what happens on the discovery side. So as we see, like all of that is interconnected. We all work together, and the task forces work together as well, separately but also together. So it's been great, and we have committees, and then we have small task forces which are short-lived. When you're on a committee, it's a 2-year commitment. A task force is a short period of time so that you can test a particular new function and then share that with everybody else. We have what we call a tech services open forum where we share anything obviously that falls inside of tech services. And we meet once a month on Thursdays. And then the ERM itself also has office hours they hold once a month, and that's on a Friday morning. And we have everybody, whatever the questions may be, licenses, ERM, or CDI, and we ask them to bring those questions. It could be an institution zone collection, it can be an NZ collection. It doesn't matter. We just say, please bring it. Whatever you got, we're going to try and help you because the committee's there. And so it's obviously comprised of CO people as well as the libraries. So we try to help as much as we can during the 2 different office hours and sharing new functionality. We try to do as much as we can to help out everybody so that it's not left to each individual library to test. Um, and this it is great because we work together, we update our workflows. We're also contemplating a new project this summer where we're going to try to help onboard new ERM people using a Canvas course. We already have at the central office in resource sharing a Canvas course being worked on for Rapido. So we kind of want to see how that looks and how long it takes. And then we kind of want to dive in and see if we can help at least the new hires for ERM, because like I said, when you're looking at network zone and institution zone and the collections and where they're managed, it can be very confusing to figure out, I have access to this collection, but I can't find it. Where is it? So we really want to help with that, how we work together between the chancellor's office and those managed collections and the institution zone and those managed collections. Okay, so I wanted to show a live demo of some of what I was talking about. So let's see. Okay, hopefully everybody can see the login page for Alma. Fingers crossed. I'll go ahead and log in. This is the network zone. I have its own institution, and I'm the admin for the NZ. So I have a different view than what libraries are seeing when they go into Alma themselves. Um, so then it's going to come up. Yes. Okay. So one of the things I wanted to show just really quick, like I kept talking about the internal description note and how I add in ECC, or I say opt-in, or I call it open access. And I talked about how it's easier to search and find. So what I do as I go in here to internal description, let me get this out of the way. There we go. And so if I say ECC, that will bring up all of the collections that are paid for centrally. So this is a quick way to find those collections, and every library has access to these. And it's real easy. The library can also do the same search from their institution zone, and they can find the collections that are part of the ECC and they should have access to. So the same if I do opt-ins. So I type in opt-in and I do that, and that'll list these are the collections that are negotiated but not paid for centrally, but they are managed centrally in the network zone, if that wasn't too confusing. So you'll see these collections that don't have all 24 libraries sharing them. These are just the subscribed libraries, and I set those up individually for each library. And even if it's one, and then I go ahead and I manage that collection even for that single library, everything, the license, the order, the collection. So this is what that opt-in search would look like. So it really does speed up being able to search for those collections in the NZ, having these keywords that are indexed in the internal description field. So that's been a really big help by having that information. So I'll just show the licenses, but then I'm going to go over to the sandbox and actually create the license. But I just wanted to show here's all of our licenses. And
Jessica,
yes,
this is
what?
James. We've got about 10 minutes left, and it looks
Oh,
like we've already got 6 questions.
oh, okay. Yeah, yeah,
If
yeah. No problem.
you want to start to try to address some of these,
Yes,
some
that
of the
would be
question
great.
and answer,
Yeah.
I can read them off to you, or if you click where it says Q&A,
Q&A. Okay.
see them.
So let's see. The top one are using the amendment tab. I do not. The libraries do in the IZ though, but I don't use the amendment tab in the NZ. Consortium manager does not talk to Alma yet. I'm hoping one day it will. That's why I try to get as much information to the licenses so that, like I said, fingers crossed, consortium manager does talk to Alma. I have the data that I need in there that is also in consortium manager. Negotiation tabs only available in the NZ. I believe if you create a negotiation tab in the IZ, I believe that's possible. I don't think most libraries use that. It's definitely specific to the licenses I have to create. They have to be negotiation. Um, I I don't know specifically if the IZs, I know they have the option, but they usually just use the regular license. Let's see, do I run into issues when sharing licenses in the NZ? Um, actually, what I do is I have what I call them like dummy licenses. So I put the terms in there. That's all that's in there. And then when I share it to an IZ, then it doesn't go across. Speaking of negotiated license, it doesn't go across as a negotiated license. It just goes across as a license with license terms. And then I break the connection once I've shared it because of the way that it works in Alma. It can be a back and forth, and I don't want the library to update it and then it come back and update my license that I'm using to share with everybody. So like I said, I break the connection as soon as I share it. Um, let's see. Next. Um, Well, we're trying to get everybody. So the question about managing opt-ins using both Alma and Consortium Manager, what are the reasons both sides, not everybody having access? So at the central office, our philosophy is ERM folks and collection development should both be in both. But we can't make that decision for everybody. But we do make the suggestion. And we do try to get as many people on both so they can get that information. But just in case it's a decision locally not to allow access into Consortium Manager, I try to put that information into Alma so that it's there. Let's see, the next one, 3-in-1 question. Ooh, okay. How much resources do you need for the management of licenses? um, let's see. Yeah, how much resources do I need for management of licenses, collections, POLs, and the NZ? Well, it's me. So that's my resource, and I do it all by myself in Alma. So it's a lot. Um, I don't even like with the terms of use itself inside of a license, I'm still working on that. I'm still working on the Rapid ILL project. We started that a year ago. So there's, like I said, some projects that are just ongoing and you just kind of move along with them. When I initially set up licenses in the NZ when we first started, it took me a year and a half to get those licenses entered. To update them goes much faster. I just have to enter in the numbers. So it is a much faster process once Consortium Manager, that process is finished. I just go in, I see the numbers, and I just put them in Alma. So that, and we even have, like I said, there you can see here a bunch of ProQuest, EBSCO. Once I get the master spreadsheet with all the information, maybe a couple days to get those updated. But ongoing, it's you know, uh, every day this is what I'm doing. So it's updating everything, trying to track down information, share with everybody. With the title list, uh, I use a lot of the auto holding features in the network zone, so that's all being updated by the vendor. If they're smaller title lists, I do those, and that only happens every year when they're renewed. So I just have to do that as an annual process. It doesn't take too much time, depends. Like if it's small, like if it's a 20 title, I actually go check each title, activate, make sure we have access. So it just, yeah, it's just me. It's just me doing it all the time. Um, let's see, quick follow-up, share the license opt-ins dependent on each institution using Alma acquisitions. Yes, if they're going to order, they do need uh, they don't actually licenses, they just need to order it. So then they create their purchase order. Because of the Rapid ILL project, we're actually getting libraries to start the licensing creation process in the institution zones. So we're trying to do everything we can to help with that too. Like I said, it's a major project because we're trying to get everybody to start with the licenses if they can, and have their own licenses. But uh, for libraries themselves, they just order they just order the collection from the network zone and they set up the purchase order. So it's pretty easy. When I update the cost, they actually see that on their POL. It's just in a notes field, so they know that it's been updated and they can grab that new cost and then paste it into their POL.
Jessica, Christine has a question in the chat field.
Oh, okay. Let's see.
She
There's
says, once a
chats.
license is shared, do IZ staff need to connect it to their collection?
Yes, they do. So it is their license, and they can connect it to their collection, connect it to the POL. So it becomes their license. And like I said, and then I break my connection so that my NZ license doesn't get updated by anything in the IZ license. I got them all? Did I get them? Order license shared. Okay. I don't know if you,
Jessica, I think one
yeah.
more just came
Oh,
into
here we go.
the Q&A.
Um, with the workflow for the auto holdings, because it was a collection that I already had and had used a title list, I activated it and set up, the auto holding features. And then I moved that license and the POL information from the old collection, and I just moved it over. And that was it. That's all I had to do. So it was pretty easy workflow to change over. It's pretty easy to change over to collections. I do have to let the libraries know that I've done that because it does affect their POL. So I always put that in my weekly update that I've made a change to a collection. If I'm testing on auto holdings, like I have one on hold right now, because I don't want to like disrupt right now our semester. Project Muse, so I'm going to test that in the summer. But so everything kind of goes on hold when it comes to auto holdings and testing. So yeah, but for the general workflow, it doesn't really add too much extra time other than getting the codes that I need, and then I set that all up, and then it's off and running, and I just kind of babysit it and see if there's issues with it.
Christine has a follow-up in the chat section.
Okay. Yes, the order function in the NZ, it's just to make the connections from the NZ license, and you need the NZ order and it has to be connected to the collection. Once all of that is set up, then the library can order it from the IZ. And then they have the purchase order sitting in their IZ for that collection. How many opt-ins do I manage? I think over 300. I think that's where I'm at now for opt-ins. Let's see, license. Have other things broken in addition to the license API? Not that I know of. That was my big API, the license API I was using. And I did work really hard with them, but they had changed something within the licenses that they couldn't make it work anymore. It was some code that we needed and they were no longer using it and they couldn't figure out how to get the API to work again. So um it's just now I have to do it manually, which is not a lot of fun, but we're getting there. We're just kind of working through. It's like the summer project. Um, no, they don't have any plans to fix it, unfortunately. I wish they
Jessica,
would.
there's
Yes.
another question in the
Oh,
Q&A now too.
let's see. Broken. Let's see. I answered the API. Is there another API or is there another one? Plan? No. Things are broken edition. I I would say the API, like I don't know about broken APIs, but like I said, with the new purchase order task list, the dates got changed and they could not find a way to retroactively fix all those dates that matched the old purchase order task list. So I just am now going in manually and changing them myself. So that was a bit of a problem. It's a little annoying because I'm still working on that one as well as I go through and I update licenses. I'm doing the January renewals right now, so I'm just changing the dates as I update those licenses.
So Jessica, this is Chris Vitus again, and I hate to cut you off, but we are at the top of the hour. This has been
Oh,
a
sorry.
fascinating session, and we've had a lot of engagement. So we really appreciate your time today. I'm sharing our concluding slide one
Oh,
more time
thanks.
just to thank everybody. We do have an evaluation survey that should pop up when you leave the session. Just want to remind everybody about our webinar archive at nasig.org/webinars. And a final reminder about our upcoming webinar on April 25th at 2 p.m. for cereals, ordering, and access basics. But again, this has been extremely helpful, fascinating. I'm glad you were able to answer a lot of those questions. And thank you so much for your time.
Yes, thank you, everybody.
Thanks. Bye, everybody.
Bye.